I make videos about music, and I use the piano to show you things that I think are cool about music theory. But despite the years of playing professionally and the hundreds of videos that I've made, there is one huge detail I've been keeping from you. In the last 10 years, a lot has happened. I graduated from college, got my first apartment, wondered what to do with my life. I worked at a hotel, I got my real estate license, I built a company, I built a piano studio and taught a whole bunch of students, and I played tons of gigs. But I just felt like nothing was really getting me where I wanted to go. So my wife and I moved across the country on a whim to a place we'd never been before, with no jobs, no money, and no plan. Then this happened.
None of you bitches got these exclusive Swisher Sweets hugs.
Yeah, but now you're all here and everything's great. There's just one problem. Even with all of the performing and all of the teaching and all of the videos, I just haven't practiced the piano, like at all, in a decade. Okay, so you're seeing the title of this video. Obviously, good is relative, and if you're watching this rolling your eyes going, oh, of course he thinks he's not good. I think musicians and artists often suffer from this thing of like never liking your own work. And no matter how seasoned you are, or if you're just starting out, there's always that feeling of knowing what we could be doing and acknowledging that we're just not doing it. And whether you're a seasoned professional like me, or you're finally just ready to start learning, I wanted to share some things that I've recently been using to help get me back on track. This video is about practicing, about finally getting better at music. And by the end of it, you're gonna have a guide to the perfect practice routine that you can start using right now, today. So let's talk about why it can be so hard to stay on top of your practicing habits, some tricks you can use to keep you on track, and then let's lay out what the ideal practice session looks like. So in my estimation, practicing sucks for three main reasons. We don't have the time, we don't have the drive, and we don't have the guidance. And based on my trusty YouTube analytics, most of you are probably either in college or you are already out in the world being a responsible adult with adult jobs and adult things to do. You don't have time to practice, right? Wrong. Well, sort of. Of all the things that keep us from practicing our instrument enough or from practicing the right things, it so often just comes down to a lack of available time to devote to it. Or at least to like a lack of available brain space to devote to it and not get caught up in the 1,000 other things we have to do. Maybe you have kids, maybe you have dogs, maybe you have jury duty. I don't know your life, but I do know that it's probably busy. It's not that you don't want to, it's that you just can't. Well, the good news is this. Once we solve that problem, so many of the other problems that get in our way when it comes to practicing get a whole lot easier to solve. You ever wait for the dishes to pile up in the sink before you do anything about them? Or how about waiting for your car to hit 15,000 miles before you go get an oil change? I've definitely not done that. Sometimes when we look at the mountain of a task before us, the first thing that we tend to feel is overwhelm. And that just makes it easier to just not start in the first place. And I don't care if you're imagining how difficult it's going to be to learn your first scales, or if you're about to take on the most complex, daunting piece that you've tried yet. When there is a massive project in front of you, we so often can fall into this loop of just putting it off and putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. Here's perhaps like the weirdest thing that I've learned about practicing and getting ourselves to actually do it. There's this thing that happens when we get a rush of motivation to sit down and start working on something at the piano, which sometimes that's driven by like a specific thing that we heard that we want to learn how to do. And then sometimes it's driven by just this momentary, like this brief surge of motivation at the thought of how great it will be to just be able to play the things we've always dreamed of being able to play. But regardless of what gets us to sit down at the piano, there comes a point where the novelty wears off. Now, what does that mean? I have a really great example of this. It's like one of the best examples that I remember very vividly. It's this line from Brad Meldau's Art of the Trio, Volume 1, one of the greatest piano trio recordings of all time, I think. But it's on a beautiful song, you may know it, it's called Blame It on My Youth. And there's this one line that Brad plays that instantly made me just go, whoa! I had to figure it out. It sounds like this. Oh my god, still, that line is just so insane. And by the time I decided to try it, I had heard it so many times from just listening to it over and over again, and it still blew my mind every time I heard it. like that. Oh, wow. Amazing, right? Here's the thing though. Literally the second I figured out how to play it, the novelty was gone. Something that just minutes ago blew my mind every time I heard it was now just a line. It wasn't mysterious anymore, because now I knew it was just a 2-5-1 with some fancy voicings underneath. And you know, when we practice, we have to be aware of the fact that the novelty will wear off. Maybe you learn how to play that song you were all excited about, and then all of a sudden you just kind of feel, I don't know, bored with the way you're playing it. Or maybe you just sit down at the piano long enough to be like, okay, I'm done with this now. Or maybe you play a bit and then you encounter this one section in something that you're working on that's just like incredibly complex or difficult or just feels really daunting, and it immediately takes the wind right out of your sails. There are a lot of reasons why that brief, fleeting moment of motivation that sat you down at the piano can just vanish in an instant, leaving you feeling drained or uninspired, just like making you want to get up and go do something else. Here's the thing. Great. Go do that. Let me explain. And see, this is where the lack of guidance kicks in. We can sometimes get that feeling of like, we just feel defeated in those moments. And it may sound counterintuitive, but honestly, the best thing to do when that happens is just to get up and go do something else. I know sometimes it can feel like the right move to just stick with it and try to brute force your way through it, but here's the thing. There were so many times in college where I would just sit in a practice room for hours because I just felt like I needed to get the time in. Or you feel this pressure because everyone else is talking about, oh, I spent 4 hours in the practice room yesterday. Oh, I spent 6 hours in the practice room yesterday. It just makes you feel like you're not doing enough. You feel like the answer is just to stay in the practice room for longer. I'd sit in there for 4 or 5 hours at a time, but you wanna know what I was doing for a large chunk of that time? It's not about how much time you spend. It's about the effectiveness of that time. You can't be effective if you're feeling uninspired or defeated or just like you're not getting to where you want to be. That is why it is super important to have a plan, and for that plan to be designed specifically around those moments when we feel defeated or overwhelmed. And yes, we have to tackle those things from time to time, but we can do it in a way where we're building up to those moments, where we give ourselves smaller wins before or maybe even after we tackle those bigger tasks. And so to help you and to help me get there, let's design the perfect practice plan. Let's first tackle the time problem, because this is the one thing that's stopping you from sitting down at the piano in the first place. And here's the most important thing I want you to take away from this. I do not care how long you practice for. I don't care if you have 60 minutes or 6. All I care about is that you decide that you're going to spend that time, whatever amount of time that is. You have to make the decision that you're going to sit down at the piano in the first place. And no matter how much time you have available, you can make it incredibly efficient, provided you do one thing every single time. Before you sit down at the piano, decide what you're going to get up from the piano knowing how to do that you didn't know when you sat down. Now think about what that means. You're gonna leave the piano bench with a new skill every single time. And that could be anything. I mean, it could be as simple as literally a fingering transition that you've been trying to nail for the last week. Or, you know, we're talking about like 2 notes or 2 chords or something that literally can take you 5 minutes to get through. And if you leave the piano with nothing else, take that as a win, regardless of how much time it took you to get there. Now, we can start to design more structure as you have more time to devote to it, but let's keep it as simple as possible. So this is something that you can apply no matter how much time you have available. You're gonna look at your practice sessions in 3 separate chunks, and we're gonna call those chunks practice blocks. They each are for a very specific purpose, so let's break them down. Something for your technique, something you can perform, something you love. These 3 practice blocks should be a part of every practice session, even if you only have 10 minutes to work. Realistically, they should be in that order too. Let's talk about what each of these blocks might look like. When we talk about technique, we're literally just talking about your physical ability to play the instrument. Now, in this context, of course, we're talking about the piano, but really, it doesn't matter what instrument you play, that's what technique is. It's your physical ability to execute ideas or music or whatever it is that you're trying to do on your instrument. Because at the end of the day, we have to develop that technical ability to execute literally anything we want to play on our instrument. And when that development stops, so too does your future in learning more complex pieces and being able to play harder, more impressive things. pianos. And you might say to me, well, I've played the same 5 songs on the piano for years and I feel like I've gotten better. To which I'd say, of course, because playing the piano literally at all is good for your technique. I mean, they're muscles, just like any other muscle. I didn't use mine for a long time and I looked like this. Ugh, look at this, all sloppy and gross. Then I started using them and now I look more like this. So strong, can pick up heavy things. You can do the same thing on the piano. But while I absolutely could get a lot out of just walking around and being more active in general, I got a ton more out of working out very specific muscles in a very specific way. And therein lies the key. Practice block number 1 is about specific muscle building so that we can develop a better constructed technique in a far smaller amount of time. So what does practice block number 1 actually look like? Well, I know it sucks, but scales, arpeggios, Hanon, etc., etc. The exercises, the things that we do to develop our technique. Look, even the elite of the elite work on these things, not because they're difficult and they're trying to get better at them, but because they are a constant refresh of the hand's physical ability to touch the keys. Faster and with more accuracy, we develop fundamentals for a reason. Now, the good part is I'm only going to ask you to devote maybe 15 to 20% of your available practice time to this block. And that's because we have to move on to practice block number 2. Practice block number 2 is where you're going to spend the majority of your practice session. And this is where you're going to work on the main project that you have in front of you. Most likely that's probably going to be a piece you're trying to work on. Here's mine. Bach has always been a nemesis for me. In conjunction with the fact that I'm not necessarily super drawn to Baroque music just in general, it's one of the hardest things that you can learn to play as a pianist, and it's one of the reasons why it's always assigned to students. See, the nature of Baroque music is that it's written sideways and not up and down. And that just means that instead of having a melody and then like a chord-based accompaniment, everything is written as its own voice. So theoretically, you could lift any particular line out of the music and it would exist on its own as a melody on its own, and it would sound good by itself. And so when you stack all these melodies together, you get this really cool effect. It's just really, really hard. But playing in this way is incredibly good for your finger and hand independence. And it's some of the greatest music that you can learn to play to help develop your technique. And after years of avoiding it, I've finally decided that I'm going to tackle some Bach. So for practice block number 2, that's what I'll work on. And what does that look like? It literally looks like this. You've probably heard people tell you to practice slowly, and I hate that it's that simple and cliche, but it just is. Just remember, playing fast is just playing slow faster.
And I suggest you let that one marinate.
And we're gonna devote 60% of our practice time to this block because it's where we work on the things that are really gonna help us progress and get to the next level. Practice block number 3 is about mitigating that feeling of overwhelm and that feeling of defeat that we can sometimes fall victim to. Especially when we just spend 60% of our time on practice block number 2, which inevitably probably came with some difficulties. In the same way that basketball players never leave the gym on a miss, we want to ensure that we're using psychology to trick our brains into thinking we just had a great time. And also because we didn't just sit down at the piano and immediately start pounding away at the things that we already know really well, this is where we give ourselves that payoff of getting to enjoy playing this instrument. And that's the whole point, right? So you have 20 to 25% of your available practice time remaining at this point, and I want you to just rip away at whatever you want to. I do not care what it is. So we're trying to Pavlov ourselves here, right? If I give my dog a treat every time he practices Bach, he's gonna start to associate the hard work with a fun reward. The concept of practice block 3 is not particularly complicated. I want you to end on a high note. Practice something you love. And whether you've spent 15 minutes or 2 hours, you'll feel great about the time that you just put in, and you'll be all that more ready to just jump right in the next time. And without even realizing it, by organizing our time and having a plan, we've addressed the guidance and the drive issues. By creating that plan, keeping it simple enough to follow, giving ourselves the flexibility of time, not needing to have hours to set aside before we're willing to sit down and start, we all of a sudden make those issues that have been holding us back all but disappear. And no matter where you are in your journey, whether you're a seasoned professional or you're just starting out, the biggest reason we struggle to stay on top of our practicing habits is because we have to do them alone. Nobody can sit down in the room with you and do the practicing for you. And I've built courses and helped tens of thousands of students either start or continue their piano journey, and the one thing that has always just been frustrating to me is simply the fact that online courses are fundamentally flawed in some ways. You know, there's data to suggest that the average online course completion is 15%, 1-5. That means 85% of people who sign up for an online course never finish it. And I know that as an educator, I don't want to sell you a course and then have no ability to follow up with you and see how you're doing. I want some way to help keep you on track. And that is why, starting today, I am launching the next chapter in my mission to help you learn how to play the piano. And I'm doing it with something called betterpiano.com. It is a brand new community-first piano education platform, which means that instead of just having access to the course library, which of course you get, you'll also have access to a community of fellow musicians and students all working towards the same goal. And you will have access to regular live stream lessons and masterclasses where your input drives the content. Members get instant access to my full course library, as well as live stream access, early releases of Better Piano YouTube content, which yes, there is a channel and you can go subscribe to it. In fact, the first 3 videos that haven't even gone up yet on the new Better Piano YouTube channel, they're live right now inside the community, and you can sign up and go watch literally right now. But one of the things I'm most excited about is the accountability section. A huge part of what this community is all about is helping you stay on track to reach your practicing goals. There is a dedicated thread for you to say, hey everyone, I'm planning on practicing 3 days this week. I think I'm gonna be able to get, maybe a half hour at a time in. And then your fellow musicians and students in there in the comments going, awesome, this sounds great, please give us an update. Lack of community and participation, I think, is one of the biggest reasons why courses fail. It doesn't matter how good the content is. There's the problem that we have to address of trying to make sure that if you dive into this thing, you're gonna get the value out of it. You're actually going to be able to do the things that it's designed to help you do. That's what Better Piano is all about. It's all about providing that same instruction, those in-depth courses that I've had for years now, which are constantly gonna be updated now with new material, updated visuals, all kinds of things that we are currently working on. Again, all driven by your input. I wanna make sure that I'm building the things that are gonna be the most helpful for you. But fixing this problem of the online courses, I feel like the best way I can help do that is by curating a community and an environment where your participation is required. I am so excited to bring back the live stream lessons and masterclasses. They're gonna be regularly coming from me, and I'm working on getting guest artists and all kinds of cool stuff. Now, here is what's gonna happen next. The very first live stream on the platform is scheduled in 1 week from today, and I'll put that date up on the screen. Between now and that day, if you sign up using the link below, not only are you gonna get access to this entire community at an insane discount of $99 for the entire year, but you will have then locked in that pricing, and as long as you stay a member, you'll keep that discount as long as you stay a member. We're still gonna have a special introductory pricing even after this is over, but for the next 7 days until that first live stream session, you can lock in $99 a year for life. You got 7 days to lock that in. The clock is ticking. Use the link in the description down below. You guys, I'm so excited to get this community off the ground with you all. I've really been thinking a lot about how I can make my courses better, and while we are actively working to do exactly that, I actually felt like it was almost outside the courses that was the opportunity to make things better. My mission is to help you learn how to play the piano, to help you understand that music is not as difficult as you might have thought. So use the link down below to check out the brand new betterpiano.com. It's the best way you can support the channel, and I'm so appreciative of your support. So thanks for checking it out. Thank you for watching this video. Keep practicing, and we will see you in the next one.